I never hate my race, but until recently I didn't know history class was jacked completely. Found my new family with the team going free. My old family doesn't understand me, cause I am so pro-white. No coke, no Sprite, I am rolling with the bubbly, gonna be more white. I saw them twist history right before my very eyes. Insurrection Day, it's in the book and it's all lies. But now I am alive and well to tell it. But will generations down the line be able to sell it? I've always been a thinker on the search for both sides, but they label me an outcast and they cannot tell me why. Guess I'm just a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. Why does affirmative action make them not hire me? Even in the countries where I'm the minority. Is my rage just that awesome and no other could compete? Is that what the anti-whites are trying to tell me? Why am I always seen as such a threat? To the point they want to strip me down till there's nothing left. Old friends from high school, man, I haven't kept one. But I got a new crew and it's where I belong. Cause if you ain't going free, you ain't rolling with me. And there are even anti-whites in my own family. But I am the one who's comfortable with myself. I try to save them from the hate so wildly raising hell. Cause I'm the black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. Is Scotland is too white, is Nigeria too black? Don't get your panties in a bunch, cause I have the right to ask. See, I'm the black sheep, cause I call it hypocrisy. And the media will give you emotions, but they will not give you honesty. Yeah, you have your feelings, but I have the crime rate. And I'ma shoot to kill if there's a danger my way. So I do not blame the cops, just the ones who are cowards, who hesitate to pull the trigger unless it is one of ours. Cause he's a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. So I put my people to death. people go free. I guess so too, like to see. I'm just trying to help our people go free. I'm just trying to see. I'm too blind. I'm just trying to see people go free. I'm just trying to see. I'm just trying to help our people go free.
Good evening, America. I'm Jason, and you are watching Jason Goes Political. For the sake of continuity, all financial gifts, $19 or less, will be read at the end of the show today. $20 or over, I will read as soon as I see them. You may financially gift on Entropy at a cost of 15% to you, and they deserve it. They're keeping free speech alive. At a cost of 15% on Odyssey as well. And finally, no cost to you over on Cash App. The links for all of those are in the description below. Everybody who would like to comment or ask a question, please tag me as No White Guilt, No White Guilt. Please also give me some feedback on how the microphone sounds. Is it full and rich and beautiful? And the image, is it coming through good and clear? Wonderful to see so many people already here with us today. We're going to jump right over and into our first news story today, which is Liz Cheney says the Republican Party is very sick and still under the control of a dangerous former president. Liz Cheney is the face of the placeholder Republicans, ladies and gentlemen. This woman is a monster. In order to try to win her primary, which she just lost, she appealed to the radical anti-whites who call themselves Democrat voters and asked them to briefly change their party affiliation to undermine the process, the primary for the Republican Party. This is the kind of mindset of these, what some might call deep state Republicans, what some might call rhino Republicans, what clearly is the case, placeholder office holders, the Republican Party hierarchy. They want nothing more when it comes to contesting Democrats and what the things Democrats want to do. These Republicans want nothing more than to maintain their seat, to maintain the pay that they get from the federal government, you and me and everyone here in these United States, to maintain their access to insider information, which is why they all end up leaving their time in the federal government multimillionaires. Kind of an odd thing to do when you're not being paid enough to become a multimillionaire. And the fame, the getting interviewed, the feeling of power, the rush of power, of being able to go into buildings where the average person is not allowed to enter, to participate in meetings that the average person is not allowed to participate in. This is what these individuals thrive on. And let us not forget, even when it comes to a monster like Liz Cheney, this dog face of the, and what is it? What's the deal with the people thinking that you can't talk about a woman's looks? That that has to end. We are ending that today, if it has not been ended for you in the past, as it has for me. If you can make fun of a man's looks, you can make fun of a woman's looks. If a woman is going to enter the sphere of politics, if she's going to get in what are traditionally and biologically roles that men are, in my opinion, more suited for, then they have to endure the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And then she as well. And she is an ugly woman. And made all the more ugly by the fact that she is viciously anti-white and she hates you to death. She wants to remain in this position. And as I say, the one thing that even with women that we shall not overlook when it comes to why these people want to remain in positions of power is the sexual satisfaction that they get, the sexcapades that they have. If you only knew the kind of things that take place in American governance in Washington, D.C. and other places around the country, the kind of sick, orgy-like mentality that is there from despicable, low-life scum that end up representing us. Well, when it's Republicans, when it's the establishment Republicans, when it is these placeholder Republicans, they are the absolute worst. They do engage in all of this. They are anti-white to various degrees as well. Some of them even more so than folks who call themselves Democrats. But then they've got to go out to their voters and they've got to lie. They've got to say that they care about your opinions, your values, your needs, your wants, your fears for the future. And then every time they get into office and they fail again and again, is all they do is have big words for you. All they do is have big threats for what's going to happen, like the big threats now about Fauci. If these claims that the Republican Party are making about Fauci, and even these placeholder Republicans are making about Fauci, if they are true, then he will be tried for sedition and given the appropriate punishment. If those things are true, who wants to put money down on, once again, as has been the case for the totality of our lives, that Republicans are going to bluster, they're going to throw out the peacock's tail and claim that they're going to roast these individuals who have done these misdeeds, these criminal acts to the American population, and they'll explain the litany of sins that these folks have committed while engaged in these activities. They'll talk about all the children that have been harmed. They'll talk about the psychological abuse of being locked in your houses. They'll talk about the economy that is ruined. They'll go down to the mom and pop shop and say, look what the Democrats have done. This lovely little family. And of course, if they're Republicans, they won't be going to the white-owned mom and pop shop. No. They'll be heading down to some non-white group, because that will be legitimate then, if it is a legitimate complaint, if it's non-white people who have lost their businesses. As far as I'm concerned, it's legitimate irrespective of the race, but not when it comes to the Republicans. No, all that matters is, are non-white children hurt? Are non-white business owners hurt? Do non-white people lose their jobs? Because that, in their delusional heads, sometimes equates to them being right. And of course it's not. This, my friends, is Liz Cheney lost her primary. And why did she lose her primary? Well, the rest of the Republicans and the Fox News, they're trying to say that they're playing the video clip of the woman who won the primary. And they're saying, look at the things she's saying. This is what Americans want. No, Liz Cheney lost the primary because Americans hate Liz Cheney, because Americans hate what Liz Cheney represents. This blue blood Republican BS that has failed us the totality of our lives. And I'll tell you exactly where it has gotten us as a consequence, and therefore exactly what bastards like this bitch are fighting for. And now her declaration of war on all of us who give a damn about Western kind and Western civilization in these United States, because she did not get to retain her sitting, just portable shit pot that they place everywhere they go, because that is what they do to the population, the Republican Party placeholders. Liz Cheney says the Republican Party is very sick. and still under the control of a dangerous former president. Now, she's not talking about the leadership of the Republican Party, the placeholder party. She's talking about the rest of us. Representative Liz Cheney on Sunday said that large portions of her Republican Party are very sick. Don't do this. If you do this, you are sick. If you hear her say that large portions of the Republican Party are very sick, and then you say to yourself, well, then I'm sick, you better go just get a job at Disney World, because you are a goofy motherfucker. That's all there is to it. Because you are too dumb to be involved in adult things. Do not take the names that they give you, even this anti-white Liz Cheney. Cheney said that many of her Republican colleagues continue to believe in what Trump says. Thank you, Light of the Twin Lamps, and everybody that got back on the feed of the mic and the visuals. I really appreciate that. It is not what Trump says. It is not that they continue to believe in what Trump says. Trump is saying the things that we want up until running for that second term of office. He was saying what the American population wants. These were deceptive dog whistles, my friends. Because how much did he actually do? Granted that he's a businessman and he thought there could be win-win outcomes. Granted that he had Republican establishment kooks coming to him and saying, well, the way business is done. Although I don't give him as much leeway as many of you will, because this guy wasn't born yesterday. He's an extremely intelligent, very successful businessman, and he was, for decades, a Democrat. So he knows the way things work. He knows that Republicans continually, they won't set a precedent for fear that Democrats will then do the same thing. Like a bunch of drooling retarduses in their high chairs again and again. And they're doing it right now. And they're heeding the things that CDC and Fauci and the others are saying right now. So I don't give him as much leash as the rest of you. Perhaps you're giving him more leash because you want him to hang himself with it. But I don't give him as much leash as the rest of you all will when it comes to these failed promises, the deceptive dog whistling. We're going to close the border. He could have dropped the 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne on the border on day one. He could have evicted CNN for the totality of his time in office. These things would have sent a powerful message to the country that he meant business. He could have pursued charges. He could have gone through leaders of the different branches of government. God, he had problems with so many, but certainly the Department of Justice. He could have hired and fired them weekly until he got somebody that was going to do the job right. Instead, he piddled around a little too much. He maybe believed a little too much of the lies. He was too much of a businessman. And you cannot be a businessman when you're even as much cupidity that can infuse the average businessman in capitalism. You cannot go into conflict against devils with that and that alone. No, you need a righteous, metaphorical sword of fire that you bring with you, unsheathed from the belts of angels themselves when you take it into such conflicts. Because you have animal monsters like Liz Cheney. Despite losing the election, Cheney said she will continue the fight for what she believed in. Which is what? Placeholder Republicans allowing there to be loss after loss after loss, always bringing the tools that will always fail them in their contests with the Democrats, whom they then go to lunch with in between votes and in between arguments. Whom they go on vacation with. Any wonder why? Do you dine with the devil? Because I sure as hell wouldn't. I wouldn't care if Chucky Schumer or Little Nancy offered me a place where they would pay $500 a plate for the food I would receive. I would not dine with the devil. Representative Liz Cheney on Sunday said that large portions of the Republican Party are very sick. That's you all. And says that they still believe in what former President Trump says. Quote, I think, one, it says that people continue to believe the lie. They continue to believe what he's saying, which is very dangerous. There is the concern trolling. These are mean pathogens. She is such a perfect little anti-white piece of shit, isn't she? The concern trolling. No, we want the border closed. We want so much changed, revamped, and revolutionized in this country. And all Donald did was come along, give us a little bit of deceptive promises, a little bit of deceptive dog whistling, and he was swept right into office. Cheney told Jonathan Karl, host of ABC's Anti-White This Week, when asked what her recent defeat says about Trump's hold on the Republican Party. Again, not a hold. It's the desire of Republican voters. Quote, I think it also tells you that large portions of our party, including the leadership of our party, oh, really, including the leadership? So then she just admitted to what I was saying, that you are the sick ones. Because now she's going to say, and the leadership. Look at this vile thing. You can see her on that clip running below there. What a vile, boy, she hit the wall a long time ago. Is she transitioning? Is she in the midst of becoming a man? Is she going to be an imaginary man? She looked like it. Both at the state level in Wyoming as well as on a national level with the RNC is very sick. So your concern for America, your concern for Western kind, your concern for Western civilization, according to Liz Cheney, is very sick. What does that tell you about her? Trump endorsed Harriet Hagerman soundly defeated Cheney in the recent Republican primary. Cheney, an old broom would have beaten that old bag. I mean, come on. They could have just set an old broom up at the lectern and the fans would have been roaring for it. It's not Liz Cheney. Cheney, who only received 30% of the vote for the Wyoming at-large Republican primary, told Karl that she believes that so many in the Republican Party are under the grips of the former President Trump, saying that her party needs to decide what its values are. Well, we're not as anti-white as you would like us to be. The average person who votes Republican doesn't want to white erase Western kind like this immediately. The average person, they're far too timid. They're far too willing to acquiesce. They're far too willing to give lip service, at least, to anti-whiteism, and therefore validate the anti-white narrative. They're far too willing to capitulate. And yet, that's not enough for Liz Cheney. What are the values that Liz Cheney and the rest of these Republican placeholder leaders are in favor of? Well, just look at your lifetime. What has it been like over the course of your total? And maybe you're young. Maybe you're one of these people who you're like 18 or you're like 24 and you're like, things just got bad. No, they didn't. You just started to notice. Now, dab behind your ears because it's still wet. I know you're still shitting orange, but go talk to some adults and see what has been happening with the Republican Party their whole life. And if your grandparents are still around, go ask them. What's been happening with the Republican Party their whole lives? Well, it's been one loss after another. One calculated, inevitable, perfectly predictable loss after another. A lot of big words, a lot of smoke, no fire. Despite her loss, Cheney said she would continue to fight for her principles, her anti-white principles, in the Constitution, while her party was still under the influence of the former president. What I'm fighting for is the Constitution. What I'm fighting for is the perpetuation of the republic. What I'm fighting for is the rule of law. The fact that everybody got to abide by the rule of law, she said. Everybody's got to abide by the rule of law. Now, that is what you're going to hear. This is the Republicans for you. If she hadn't lost, she very well could have been part of the chorus saying, we've got to investigate this other thing over here. Maybe that something to do with Fauci or the CDC. Maybe something to do with this raid on President Trump's home. And then say, well, our hands are tied. It's the rule of law. We stand by our principles and we lose happily. It's real easy for somebody like Liz Cheney to lose again and again and again against the radical anti-white Democrats when she can, with the amassing wealth, move further and further away the outcomes of anti-white policies. She can continue to rake in the money while the rest of us sink into a mire of ever oblivion. Really easy to lose. I mean, for God's sakes, folks, fighters, soccer players, I mean, it's really pronounced in soccer around the globe. They take dives all the time. That is effectively what the Republican Party placeholders do when they use the tools they know cannot work, and then they happily bind their hands by the rules, by the decorum, by the law, by the whatever it is, against a party that never observes any of that, for whom principles are employed or thrown overboard. They're 86th, depending on whether or not they can arrive at anti-white conclusions. What I'm fighting for is the fact that elections have to matter, and that when the election is over and the courts have ruled and the Electoral College is met, that the President of the United States has to respect the results of the election. Now, I wonder, it'd be a good question. Of course, this ABC fool is not going to ask it. Tell us exactly, Liz, how you went through all of the claims of irregularities in the previous election. There are a lot of claims. There are these people who are making these claims have a lot of evidence. How thoroughly did you go through all of that? When did you do that? And I want you to be able to speak to the letter of every one of those claims, because she seems to be certain. She seems to be certain that none of those claims are true. So produce the results, bitch. That's something. Her feet won't be held to the fire because she's anti-white and the news and entertainment media are anti-white. So they're not going to hold her feet to the fire. She added, what I'm fighting for is the principle that we have peaceful transition of power. Yeah, that was real peaceful. People locked in their homes. By the way, the CDC saying now, and don't you all believe this for a second, my opinion. Oh, well, we're going to investigate whether or not errors were made so that we can do better in the future. Folks, they did exactly what they wanted to do to us. Exactly. No errors, no investigation, no walking out after the fact. This is exactly what we said they would do. Well, now we're going to have, sort of like we're going to do this sort of an autopsy on what happened. And we're going to see exactly how we could have done better and what might have been wrong. And no, you did exactly what you wanted. In the midst of it, it was obvious that what you were implementing, in my opinion, was wrong. You saw contradictions all over the place. We'll keep moving, though, and keep talking about these people, because this is never going to end. We have to be part of the solution, or there is no solution. Cheney vows to fight other Republicans who embrace Trump's election lie. It's over at The Guardian. Cheney says 2 Republican U.S. Senators, Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, have both made themselves unfit for future office. If they're unfit for future office, it's because they have a lot of big words, a lot of bombast, and then no substance. That's why they are unfit for office. The former top Republican, Liz Cheney, who lost her Wyoming seat. And by the way, we need to abide by those elections, Lizzie. Back to I guess you can't go to the whorehouse in D.C. anymore. You'll just have to go maybe to back to work at the whorehouse in Nevada or wherever it was, who lost her Wyoming seat in Congress last week when she was beaten in a primary by a Donald Trump-endorsed challenger, is threatening to turn her political muscle against other prominent politicians in her party. She means you and me again. I'm just going to keep driving that point home. You got to remember, that's who she's declared war on. That's who she's saying is sick. and perfectly demonstrated by the previous article, and the leadership, who have embraced the former president's attack on democracy. Those are the exact same words of the Democrat Party. If that wasn't part and parcel of the Republican placeholders, then wouldn't they kick her out? Wouldn't they take her aside and say, look, you're not going to be a member of this party anymore. You're done. If you keep talking like a Democrat and you keep attacking the party. In an interview with ABC News aired on Sunday, she said that some of the best-known Republican figures are now within her sights. She's a woman scorned. She's now going to hold this in her heart forever until she inflicts this. Too many women live this way. She name-checked Kevin McCarthy, Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz. Boy, this DeSantis commercial is absolutely so comical. I cannot believe that adults put this Top Gov thing. Oh, God, I laughed out loud when I saw that. He's like all his like totally out of shape self waddling over to the, what was it? I didn't get to see the whole aircraft. Was it F-18? And it said Top Gov on it in like a flight suit. Oh God, that was really sad. That was like B-movie sad. That was like porno B-movie sad. Ted Cruz and Josh, the one ball Holly, all of whom have openly supported Trump's lie that electoral fraudsters stole the 2020 presidential race from him and handed it to his Democrat rival, Joe Biden. Well, we all know the Democrats won this presidential election. And even if you wanted to question, even if you were like, well, I don't know, maybe let's investigate it some, even if you had that opinion, you can't, because the Democrats don't allow freedom of speech. They don't allow people to hear you talk. They'll shadow ban you, and then they'll just censor you off of all the platforms that you are on. And in fact, at some businesses, if you decide you're going to talk that way, they'll just fire you for creating a hostile environment. That is how Democrats operate, like the mob. When are the people who represent the real resistance against anti-whiteism and in this case, manifested by those who vote Democrat and Democrat politicians, when are they going to say enough is enough? Stop playing fair, you fucking cowards. Stop with these Queensberry rules. Stop with this, we will be dignified losers. We're fucking sick of being losers, dignified or otherwise. I want victory at all costs, because that's the only thing that will defeat Democrats in the United States, and everyone knows it. And the whole 4 years Trump was in office, the entire 4 years that Trump was in office, the Democrats said, big media empires in this country went around saying, universities, professors went around saying it was an illegitimate election. He's not my president. This was a stolen election. Nothing happened to even a single one of those people. Nothing. But you have a terrible type of cross between a cold and a flu and whatever COVID-19 is that the WHO and CDC says it is. And even though they change their positions and flip-flop back in the other direction, you will still be victimized if you don't agree with the current flip-flop. And with all of that, society shut down so that nothing, just coincidentally, nothing could be observed as it was. And all of these claims and all of this evidence brought forward about weird things going on. And then a campaign ran by a corpse in a basement gets more votes than ever in American history, gets more black votes in black areas than Obama got black votes in those black areas. And no one better question whether or not that's legitimate, because that was one legitimate election. Everybody wanted corpse in chief rigor mortis in there because everybody wanted the things he promised, right? War on fossil fuels and all these things they say now. Well, I didn't say that. And you can pull up the clips all day long. You're dealing with the fucking mafia. Do you think Lucky Luciano would give a shit if you said, listen, Lucky, I got you on a Memorex here. Last week when you were in town, you said XYZ. Now you say ABC. What's going on here? You're dead. You're dead. That's what happens. That's who you're dealing with the Democrat Party. Crossing the divide and shaking hands with them. Sooner shake hands with a pedophile. Dead one. Her comments on Sunday suggest that her plans to confront election deniers go much wider than Trump himself. There she is. This is the warfare. I want you all to appreciate it. 7:17 Eastern time. We're going to be going to no later than 8 or maybe 8:10 at most, because 8:30 I'm going to be over on iHypocrites channel. We're going to be talking about tactics when debating anti-whites. You're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you're there. Share the URL. Tell people about it. She is speaking. That's why I said she's the face of this. Or is she the face of it? Excuse me. You all can determine for yourself. Maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I'll suddenly conclude she's an angel. Axis Mundi pointing out that our entire country shut down to various degrees. Businesses shut down and everything. Border wide open. Wide open. They were so worried about COVID-19 that they left the border wide open. And remember what we said here from the very beginning, that anti-whites were going to use it every direction, and they did. Initially saying COVID-19, no big deal, because it was coming from a non-white country. They went out and they told you got to go embrace a non-white person. But it seems to be coming from China. So wouldn't you want us to embrace Chinese people? Yes, but then any non-white people as well. Just as long as you're throwing mud in the face of a white person. And then, wow, this is very useful other ways. Very many ways. And you found out Jason was exactly right. Where cities and states were more anti-white, more rigorous restrictions. Mediocre places, mediocre restrictions. Anti-whiteism at its weakest, next to few restrictions. Everything locked down. Your children, psychoses through the roof, I'm told. Family feuds and fightings. Brutality in the house because people don't know how to live with each other anymore because they all live in social media. They all live for the entertainment. Why? Because all the commercials are telling them all the time that your life is garbage unless you have the newest car, the newest tie, the newest handbag. Then they get shoved into a box with each other. And then you suddenly have the psychological and physical abuse there. Both male and female, and the children getting abused. Many psychiatrists, psychologists saying damage for a lifetime. Of course, CDC saying now, Tony Fauci saying now, no, there's no damage. Well, of course they would say that. Of course. They're responsible. I'm bringing Cheney up because she is speaking what the rest of these anti-whites are thinking. This is war on you and me. This is war on white America, who isn't anti-white, and non-white people who are not anti-white, who love this country and they want it to remain a Western. They want all of these things that white people make, create, sustain to remain. That's who she's waging war on. And she is, just because she's a woman and she can't hold it in. She can't be, she just got to scream. She just got to shout it to the world because she just got her ass handed to her in this primary. Totally had her ass handed to her. So much that she's appealing to Democrats to feign being Republican voters. And she's going to come out and say the war is against you all, but she's going to talk about the avatar, Donald Trump. But this is their thinking. Pay attention to these demons because they are at work. They want to shut you down. At the same time, You have to pay attention, very close attention, even more attention to these politicians and wannabe politicians who are what we might refer to as the dissident Republicans. Gosar and Green and Gates and Boebert and these sort of people. You have to hold their feet to the fire. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, because you better believe. You better believe. Just like that guy, I don't know what his name was, down in Texas, who revealed, he said, yeah, I'm running for Republican office, and then as a Republican running for office, and the Republican Party sent down this campaign manager of some sort, and the first thing this person said was, don't talk about anti-white. Don't use anti-whiteism. Don't say anti-white. Well, why is that? Why is it that the Republican Party, even when I was back working in the Nerve Center, 2001, why is it that Nerve Center for the Conservative Movement, 2001, why is it then, and going back as far as our grandparents and granddaddies and mommies can tell us, have been so infinitely concerned with the non-white population to the detriment of the white population who keep voting for them because they've got nowhere else to go, the ones who are not as radically anti-white? Why is that? Because they hate you. The Republican Party hates you. If you are white and you're not anti-white, the Republican Party hates you. Get that through your thick heads. So you better believe that these so-called like dissident Republicans, that they're going to be getting plenty of visits, my friend. They're going to be getting the metaphorical, either your signature or your brains are going to be on that contract treatment. So we better be on them. The ridicule, and we'll talk more about that. I'm going to get through this. We got another story because we have consequences at 7:23. I'm going to be very focused on working to ensure that we can do everything we can to not elect election deniers, she said. Okay, so this is going to be this slander that she's going to use for anybody who's a dissident. I'm going to work against these people. I'm going to work to support their opponents. So she's got contacts with moneyed people, etc. And she's obviously already had the skids have been greased and the palms have been greased with her KY jelly. And so she's going to be trying to hook up as many villains as possible to take down as many dissident Republicans as possible. Cheney said that 2 Republican U.S. senators, I wonder when she was standing at that lectern, if they had panned back a little bit, you would have seen the strap on. Cruz from Texas and Hawley from Missouri have both made themselves, quote, unfit for future office, she said. She's got a vendetta, folks. She said that both know what the role of Congress is with respect to presidential elections, and yet both took steps to fundamentally threaten the constitutional order. Cruz was, again, somebody put her feet to the fire. I want to hear all about the evidence that she went through, because she didn't go through shit. She didn't look at a single claim. She didn't look at any evidence whatsoever. Nothing. This is all about hating white America. This is all about hating Western civilization. Cruz was seminal in the Senate in devising a plot to block certification of Biden's 2020 victory in 6 battleground states. Folks, this was the most feckless, weak-willed, pathetic effort that these senators, House people put forth to challenge anything. They act like this was some castle coup. And of course they do. And of course we should in the reverse. What they did and what they do daily is a coup against the American population, is a revolution against the American population. That's how we should be talking about it. It's a threat to the lives of every single white American. Everything they do, every breath they take. I'm telling you what, folks, the day's going to come when people start electing people like me. And things are going to get very different. When these mobsters in the Democrat Party have had nothing but these inflatable knockover dolls to combat all these years. And then they come up against folks who are the consequence of the Democrat perfidy. Cheney also had tough words in the ABC News interview for DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and McCarthy, the current House minority leader, loser. McCarthy is a leading candidate to become speaker should the Republicans take back the House of Representatives in November. And get ready, as is the case for our whole lives, for nothing good to happen. Let me take a quick look at what you all are saying to keep you all engaged, and then I will keep looking at reading this article. And what do you all think? What do you all want to see happen? Of course, modify any hostility to something acceptable. All right. Hello to everybody over there at Odyssey. All right. Blank there. Hello to everybody over there at D Live. Good to see you. Let's see over here. Okay. Blank there. Let me take a look on YouTube. Lunder says, image is handsome, Mike is rich. I love it. Thanks, man. Twin Lambs. Am I going crazy, or do 99% of commercials that have a white woman in a couple have her paired with a man who appears to be sub-Saharan African descent? Well, not 99% sub-Saharan descent, but 99% non-white, yes. You're not crazy. That is happening in every Western country. I mean, it's just white women, and it's been that way for our whole lives. And that's anti-whites in action for you. Elaine Sabatino has a number of flames, a bunch of flames, because we're spitting fire tonight, as is wont on Jason Goes Political. Fit and Healthy at Any Age says hello. Scrolling through here. Preach It, brother, says Fit and Healthy at Any Age. I love it. Thank you, man. There were also no vaccine mandates for non-white border crossers. Also raises a lot of questions. Yeah, that was I never did either hear about people coming into the country when they were caught being immediately vaccinated. I never heard about that. Maybe it happened and they didn't tell anybody. You know what I mean? They'll tell us that at some point in the future. Oh, yeah, we did. Sure. They were also, okay, that's what I just read. The Republicans, says Fournel, need to grow a pair if they are ever going to redeem themselves. I'm sick. People think the libertarians are a viable alternative. Yeah, the libertarians are no way a viable alternative. You're 100% right. The great Fournel speaks words that are true, and fewer you will find are truer. Franklin is here. Great to see you, brother. Azimuth Clark. Janice is here. Hello and welcome. Lewis is here. Great to see everybody. 0022. Simon JJ. Rafa is here. Escape is here. Great to see you all. We'll go back to this. Yeah, there's the libertarians. There are, just as you could say when it comes to conservatives, in the rank and file of those folks who consider themselves libertarians, there are good people. In the leadership of the libertarian cause, there are like absolute Barnum and Bailey clowns, people that are just, and it's amusing, it's just endlessly amusing to me how they always fancy themselves as extremely intelligent. It's Bader-Meinhof 101. They'll focus all of their energies on reading from this economist and these philosophers, and then they'll go out and recite these things and think or rely on that, confusing people with baffle-gabbing that they are intelligent, but they're not. I mean, if you can't see that their systems, their ideas about how to organize society and government couldn't possibly work in the real world, if you can't see that, then you're really quite stupid. You're really too detached from reality to be maybe even allowed to vote. But there's no hope in hell of a libertarian movement effectuating any positive outcome for the United States. Could you imagine? Could you imagine an army of radical individualists going up against the group tied together by ties of force and blood and rage and hate? These collectives, it would just be over in minutes. It would be over in minutes. Then the rest of these libertarians would run back to their houses and probably with Liz Cheney to bend them over, and they would be begging to just be left alone for a little while longer. Ultimately, all the good people who are libertarians end up coming over to white positivity because they realize that libertarian ideas simply don't work in the real world. These are people who, what they did was they made the error of taking their tabletop gaming into the real world. And they don't realize this doesn't transition. Like tabletop gaming, fantasy, real world. McCarthy was initially critical of Trump's role in unleashing the violent storming of the Capitol. Give me a break. You mean in those videos where you saw people walking through the roped corridor? You mean that? Or do you mean the one scene where police officers were punching people in their faces and they fought back right at the entrance? Is that it? You know what didn't happen? You know what didn't happen when the what were they called? It's an anti-white group. Several times there have been anti-white groups who have just rushed inside the Capitol. Check it out for yourself. I mean, maybe what I saw was all lies. And you know what didn't happen? Police were not there punching them in the face. Police were not there hitting them over the head with batons. Police were not there knocking their teeth out. That's what didn't happen when the anti-whites rushed. No, they just let them come in. They're like, okay, you can come this way. Shout all you want, do whatever you want. Oh, you want to set off a bomb? Okay, you can do that too. I mean, do you remember? Bomb was set off in the Capitol by anti-whites. But yeah, I mean, maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't. Check with CNN. So McCarthy's initially critical of Patriot Day because he's a scumbag. That's why. Where he said, quote, "I've had it with this guy." But since then, he has swung behind Trump's anti-democratic movement. Oh, it's despicable. And why is he doing that? Votes. Can we harm McCarthy? Absolutely. We can get him to admit that he does not care about the white race, that he's just worried about everyone else. Get him to talk about how the white race is a back burner issue, and that will turn off enough voters for him that he will lose. So we absolutely can force their hand. My views on McCarthy are very clear, Cheney said. He's been completely unfaithful to the Constitution. I don't believe he should be the Speaker of the House. She also accused DeSantis of campaigning for election deniers. Boy, unbelievable how well they know how to use language and how poor the Republican white sympathetic side is. This is something that people have to have have got to have real pause about. The Wyoming Congresswoman, former, is a vice chairperson, chair demon of the House Committee, which has been investigating the January 6th Patriots Day, where the patriot lost his innocence. She was also one of 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Trump after the breach of the Capitol compound. The fact that those who stood up against Trump's attempt to subvert American democracy, this is getting so tiresome, have been almost universally forced from the party was revealing, she said, adding, it says people continue to believe the lie. They continue to believe that what Trump is saying, which is very dangerous. People are forming their own opinions, and Liz Cheney hates that. Liz Strap-on Cheney hates that people can form their own opinion at variance with these Republican placeholder politicians. Let's jump down. See, I guess that is the end there, so didn't have to go far. On Sunday, Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator from South Carolina, who was involved in Trump's pressure campaign on Georgia officials, the pressure campaign to overturn the state's election results. We are going to live in their fictions forever if we don't start to make waves and start to change things legally and start to change things that are happening in this country. You are not going to be able to start another party. You are not going to be able to raise money and then be able to give money and take money and therefore make politicians and erase politicians. You're not going to be able to do it. I have articulated how we can make a change. And we can't do it on the biggest politicians. It's going to be the hardest. The ones that are the most well-known, like that effeminate punk loser, it would be very difficult. But there are the dissident politicians that we can hold their feet to the fire. We can make them say things that are beneficial to all Americans of any and every race and religion and no religion. Because we can make them talk about anti-whitism. We can make them talk about Westmen and Western kind and white people, and how anti-whitism is the great evil of our age, and how that is what's cited every time the Democrats and anti-whites anywhere who call themselves anything, they always cite the anti-white pretexts for the harm that they inflict on Western kind and Western civilization. It is a litany every single time. So you are not going to be able to win unless you acknowledge the point at which we are victimized. No more of these proxy positions. No more taking a position where we're not really getting attacked. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. So Lindsey Graham, Georgia officials, he's granted a temporary reprieve by an appeals court from having to testify before the same grand jury in Fulton County. Well, what did he do there? Did he promise to vote for some other anti-white thing, or to abstain from some other anti-white thing? What are the consequences of things like this, folks? Well, the consequences are things like what is on the TV behind me, a little harder to see. What are the consequences? I want you to think about this seriously. What are the consequences for America when Americans look at two parties as we hit 7:40, 20 to 30 minutes at max left here with you all? Jason Goes Political today. We've had a great time because we are not only sharing information, we are changing the world. We articulate assignments that you can see will work because you can see how they work. And that these things are within your grasp. You don't need a country of your own. You don't need to be able to print the money. You don't need to be able to have your own news network. You don't need any of these things that you will never have to get started and to make change. I went from talking, lecturing, preaching years and years of the Go Free method since 2001. Of course, I was preaching Go Free before then. But I gave up talking about politics when I left DC. I came back for the purpose of this show because people wanted to talk about politics, and there was a way that I knew in my mind, and I came here and articulated a way that we could make a change. And how many other content creators out there, organizational leaders out there who have been, they do nothing but focus. This is their specialty, is politics, have told you how you could change things. Zero, and you know it. Because every suggestion that they make is the same old tired, beaten, feckless suggestions and activities of the past. Every single one. So those audiences that have been listening to that poison, they need to come over here. They need to show up here as quickly as they can. Because when you vote for the lesser of two evils, when you cheerlead a politician that you like, and then when he or she does well, you say, oh, we did well. And when he or she does poorly, you say, darn it, we'll get them next time. You're doing nothing. Nothing. Face the facts. You are doing nothing. Get up off the bottom of that boxing ring, because you've been knocked out for a long time. You're doing nothing. Face it. And my world and your world is getting worse. When you take somebody who's just a dissident, and there have been other dissidents. These are not the first dissidents in the Republican Party. There have been dissidents also in the Democrat Party. When all you do is cheerlead those, you're doing nothing. Go out and vote for them. You're doing nothing. Buy them a website. You're doing nothing. Because year after year after year, the dialogue stays the same. That's why there's a continuity of agenda. That's why every time we vote for the lesser of two evils, or for this particular dissident to go to office, we continue to get losses. Every single cycle. I'm fed up with it. And these content creators, these thought leaders, organizational leaders, they can just go themselves. They get upset because I tell it like it is. I mean, I know it's got to suck that you do something every day and you don't come up with any plan that you can look at on paper and see will work. And then some genius guy comes along and does it like that. I know that's got to suck, but it is what it is. Here are the consequences. And the consequences of these methods that have been in place for far too long, without any contradiction, without any pushback, were bad 50 years ago. That the consequence, 100 years ago, the consequences were bad. So it's not like it's about to get worse, or it's not like today it's just getting bad. And I say again, for all of these folks who are new and they newly looking into politics, and they're like, well, things are now, they've been bad. You know, they got bad 7 years ago, or they got bad. Just stop talking and learn, for Christ's sake. This is where we're at today because of the Republicans you've been voting for and allowing to speak in a language where you thought, oh, they're dog whistling to me. They really care about. It's been deceptive dog whistling all along. Fools. Guidelines about student gender don't violate parents' rights, judge says. A judge on Thursday dismissed a complaint against the Montgomery County School Board. That's just that way, not terribly far, in Maryland, by parents who alleged that the system's students' gender identity guidelines violated their state and constitutional rights. So voting for the lesser of two evils, letting politicians deceptively dog whistle to you, and then especially all of the, I truly abhor all of you out there who make the argument of, well, you know, he really couldn't go further than that with what he was saying because then he would get kicked out of office. I despise you. If you're one of those people, you better cleanse that from yourself real quick. You better cleanse it from your system real quick. You need a baptism of fire. I don't want to hear ever again, he or she just couldn't go any further. Because those excuses are the reason why now we have situations where schools can help your children transition, and it's not a violation of parent rights against your will. Well, he couldn't say that, Jason. If anybody says that to me, oh boy. If anybody says, well, Jason, you can't expect Bobert to say what you think needs to be said. I mean, she's doing her best. You. How many more children? The one we're going to be talking about in a moment tried to kill herself at school in the midst of transitioning. You got any more excuses, buddy? How many more excuses you have for Jason? How many more for the rest of us? How many more excuses do you have? You know what I say? Bobert. Getz and all the rest of them. If they're not going to call it anti-whiteism, they're doing nothing. Nothing. What's different? You going to cheerlead for them? Oh, they won. That means we won. You didn't do shit. This is hell. And hell's getting hotter every day. And if the fires of hell don't light a fire under your ass, maybe it's because you're already dead. Maybe it's because you're so numb to the evil. Maybe it's because you are defective. And that's really the truth about so many people, especially white people today. So many of you are just defective as human beings. You don't know who to follow. You don't know whose advice to listen to. You can't even pick the right fucking toothpaste for your ass. You're in the bathroom there squirting preparation H on your toothbrush. You're all so many of you are just defective losers. Nothing but arguments against what clearly needs to be done that I articulate. Clearly needs to be done. You think I'm too hard? You're too soft. You think I'm not right? You're too dumb. And it's like I'm saying, the time for this, we're all buddies on this side being victimized by the anti-whites. And so don't train your sights on us. That's gone. That's out of here. The first fuckers you train your sights on are the people who are undermining your resistance. How fucking stupid can people be? Don't punch right. You. I'll knock your ass right out. Three parents who filed anonymously in 2020 against the Montgomery County Board of Education argued that the guidelines curtailed their ability, quote, to direct and care, custody, education, and control of their minor children, close quote, under the 14th Amendment. By the way, under the 14th Amendment works 100% of the time for anti-whites. It was just used in Florida to overturn that dum-dum, he looked like a waddling sausage out there on the flight. Was he on a flight deck or was he on land? Walking out to the F-15. He looked like a piece of sausage in a flight suit. 14th Amendment works beautifully there. Not going to work for your white babies. You got it? The parents said that the Montgomery County Public School 2020 guidelines for student gender identity were designed to work around parental involvement, quote, in a pivotal decision, close quote, in the children's lives, and that the guidelines enable school personnel to allow children, quote, to transition socially to different gender identity at school, close quote, without parents' notice or consent. That means it can be against the will of the parents. One provision advised that, at least in my opinion, that the school personnel speak with the students about the level of support they receive or anticipated receiving at home before contacting the students' parents, according to the memo. The guidelines also advised, okay, yada, yada, yada. What else? Let's just get to the bottom. We're coming up closer to the end here. They are the ones, quote, they are the ones that are to give guidance to the children and to help them through this very important step. Claybrook said, quote, not necessarily to the exclusion of schools, but schools can't do that to the exclusion of parents either. So this is clearly a retardus lawyer. Look at the argument that this fool just made. That the parents should be able to help their child decide what gender they are. And he says, well, not excluding the school should definitely have a voice. The school, what is the school? Don't anthropomorphize it. The school, you mean hardcore anti-white pieces of shit in education. That's what you mean. Because education is self-selecting. Good people leave education all the time because they can't stand how anti-white it is. And the good people that remain in there keep their mouths shut because they get persecuted for not going along with the anti-white religion of Western civilization now. So Claybrook says, well, parents should be able to talk with their children about whether or not they're going to be a imaginary male or imaginary female, but the schools, the anti-white radicals, should be included in that conversation. This is clearly an argument from weakness. Why are we as a society in a place where you have to argue on whether or not you get to decide what gender your child is when they don't even care what gender they are, in my opinion, at these ages, where you are so weak that you have to make the argument that, oh, yes, we, of course, will be incorporating all of the radical anti-whites that want to take any child that has the slightest bit of, a little boy who says, well, I kind of like the whatever, and a little girl who says, I kind of like being able to play with the trucks or whatever, and then want to explore that with children who might just be very confused, who might just need adult guidance to understand the world, in my opinion, rather than adult guidance helping them to decide, well, maybe you're actually a different gender than you believe yourself to be today. Just my opinion about it. I mean, there are people out there. It's true. There's something called gender dysmorphia, and I'm not going to preach on gender dysmorphia. I just heard of it. So there are people out there who believe that they are the other sex or a different sex or a combo of sexes. Apparently, there are an infinite number of these combos, which is why I started the other day using imaginary, because imaginary is the Latin verb and root for imagination, and it means to picture oneself in the mind. So if they are seeing themselves in their mind, I mean, there's nothing derogatory about that word. It's just saying they are seeing themselves as different than what everybody else sees from the outside, right? If they're naked, we're going to say, oh, that's a whatever, and that's a whatever. But if they say, no, you might see one thing, but in my mind, I'm something different. I'm picturing myself. So imaginary, so the parents, now we've gotten to a place where, now I've asked the question, did anybody answer it? How did we get to a point in the last 10 to 15 minutes of Jason Goes Political? If you have any financial gifts, get them in. You have any questions, tag me, comments, tag me, whatever it might be. How do we get to a point where the defense against anti-whites being able to just take your child away and say, we're going to decide with your child whether your child is a boy or a girl, going to grow up into a male, and we're going to help them begin transitioning, where an argument from weakness has to be made that we really think the parents should be involved in this, but not at the exclusion of these radical freak anti-whites who want to destroy Western civilization. None of their exclusion. How did we get there? By allowing Republicans, who are the party, who are the representatives of the pushback against the victimization by Democrats. They are the entity. We have allowed them to speak with the words of their choice. We have allowed them to deceptively dog whistle to us. We have allowed the lesser of two evils, election after election, to lose again and again and again and again until we get to this. We don't want our trans kids, quote, we don't want our trans kids to be mistreated or bullied or harassed in any way, Claybrook said. but we want the parents to be able to help in the transition, to help in the process, not to be excluded from it, close quote. Are you ready to listen to me? Are you ready to people? I'm so tired of this. It's so banal now, this red pill. You know, are you ready to unsheathe the metaphorical sword of righteousness to put an end to this filth? Well, if you're not, you're going to end up like this dad who down in Florida, I'm not going to put this up on any of the TVs. It's a video of this guy. Florida father Wendell Perez tells the state surgeon general that Clay County District schools, so we were just talking about Maryland, now we're talking about Florida, Clay County District schools secretly transitioned his 12-year-old daughter without his knowledge and affirmed a male name and pronouns, which contributed to her attempted suicide in a school bathroom. A 12-year-old girl who they've transitioned her, they've given her male pronouns. So I guess we got to call her, she's an imaginary male. So they helped her to transition from a little girl, 12 years, I mean, it's a little girl, to an imaginary male, to an imaginary boy. And then in the midst of this, she tries to commit suicide at school. That's what you're going to be, your kids. It's going to be your grandkids. It's going to be your nieces and nephews. That's what you've gotten from listening to everybody else. Maybe we can say it this way. You done with the red pill? You ready for the iron pill? You ready to put some iron into your body and get those red blood cells pumping? Because if you don't, we're just going to continue down this road. And it's going to continue to get worse and worse. As if that's not bad enough. So here's something that you can do right now. I'm going to take a look at what you all are writing. Here's something that you can do right now. Violence is Life says it is unrelenting warfare on us. It's unrelenting warfare over there on DLive. Unrelenting warfare on us by the anti-whites. Thought says, courage to overcome a fear of a fight or violence keeps lots of us quiet. These anti-whites use in your face, getting close up to you, right? You're talking about in person. Yeah, but we can fight and physically defend yourself if you're physically assaulted, without question. The law is not going to be on your side. So you can make a decision about what you want to do there, stay or leave or whatever. But if you are physically attacked, physically defend yourself. Here's something you can do right now. You can have a Gab account, have a Twitter account. Follow me on Gab and Twitter. I have started gabbing at and tweeting at some of these dissident Republicans, Boebert and some of the others. And I'm respectful of them because I don't want to be just, immediately banned by them, which of course will probably end up happening, especially once we start having more success. But that's okay because there will be others. When I tweet at them and gab at them, questions like, okay, why aren't you saying this? Why don't you say that? This is the real problem. Like and repost everything. When I make a comment to a Marjorie Green, when I make a comment to her, we want so many likes and reposts that there's no way that she can ignore that. That she'll feel the heat coming from us. That you're going to have to start talking about things as they actually are. Rather than give us this mealy-mouthed garbage with some of the deceptive dog whistling that's getting all of these losers today, who are these political wannabes, these observers of politics, cheerleaders of politics. It gets them all excited, gets them all aroused with the deceptive dog whistling coming from somebody like a Green. Who gives a shit? It's the same thing decade after decade from Republicans. Let's make them say our name. Let's make them talk about what's actually happening, because if they don't, there's no difference between them and a Liz Cheney. None whatsoever. No difference. In fact, I would go so far as to say that some of these people that you think are dissidents, real dissidents, we're going to discover that's just their angle to getting into office. You watch. We're going to find out that some of these dissidents, this is just their way to get some votes and to get some money for their own little personal space, because they just want to be a placeholder too. Because if they won't say the things that are real, because the things that are real can cause you to lose elections, that can cause you to be in an actual fight, then you know that they're not there for the real deal. They're just there for themselves. You're just seeing another Lindsey Graham in a Marjorie Greene. You're just seeing more and more of the same old that we've had all along, just a new angle. You watch, we'll find out that some of them are nothing more than a new angle. Okay, got nobody over here at Entropy. We'll check over here on Cash App and then look at YouTube. And then one more quick look, and then we will be out of here at 8:03. 8:30, we're going to be back over on iHypocrites channel. I want you to be there. I want you to cheer us on. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have Hardwood Operator as financially gifted. Get out your raucous emojis. 07s, raucous emojis. V's for victory. God bless you. Hardwood Operator. First, a $5 financial gift, and then a $20, making it $25 over here on Cash App. Bless you, brother. We really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. He says here with the $20 financial gift, for continually organizing for white well-being. Amen to that. We have to be in motion. We have to be making it happen. Yes, continually organizing for white well-being. Leadership words, I really appreciate it. Hardwood Operator, ladies and gentlemen, $25 financial gift. Thank you all for celebrating that champion. Kingdom of Vinland says, you need to run for president at some point, Jason. Who knows what the future holds for me? Maybe so. It's not impossible. Rafa says, did you know the website named American Renaissance, Amren, from Jared Taylor? Did you know the website named? Yeah, I know Jared Taylor. Is that all you're asking me? Do I know Jared Taylor, and do I know of that website and that organization? Yes, is the answer. And I also know that he's going to have on a very proud Jewish woman as a speaker who is a staunch Zionist by her own words. Those are her words. And she's going to be a speaker there. Did she win the prize? Oh, no, it's tomorrow. No, it's today. It's today in Florida, isn't it? Laura Loomer. So it just shows you how sick our race is. Real men, real champions. What is it? I'm going to share with you. This was over on Little Apostate's channel. She had a meme. I'm going to share it with you. It's by Thucydides, I think it was. I had read this before, sometime in the past, and I couldn't remember the whole quote, and I couldn't remember who said it. And then I saw it on her Twitter, and we're looking to have her on next Wednesday. Looks like not this Wednesday, not tomorrow, next Wednesday. And the quote, essentially, by this historian and general in Aryan Greece or ancient Greece, was that if you look for your intellectual leadership in the physically weak, I'm paraphrasing. If you look for your intellectual leadership in the physically, and that would also be like mentally weak, then you're going to end up with a society that is, and in this case, a movement, a sphere, an effort, a defense that is led by cowards and fought for by fools. And God, nothing could be truer. Nothing could be truer today. It just absolutely exemplified what is happening here today. You can't even pick. I mean, you have nobody's fighting over it's like all of the robust, aggressive, and intelligent men have shown up here in service to white well-being, because I attract the best, because I am the best. But nobody's knocking the door down. No big crowds are knocking the door down to say, we want more of that. Nobody's knocking the door down saying, we want these folks to be speakers. We want to hear what they have to say. No, it's because the population is sick and they're led by cowards, and we have cowardly results as a consequence. And those who would go out there and physically fight, that's all, or by physically fight, I mean metaphorically fight, because you have to get in the trenches against like the Democrats, against the anti-whites in the classroom, at the family Thanksgiving table. They're just aimless. And they're just, as a consequence, it's just fools. It's just blind aggression. That's what we're left with. I'm going to make sure to get that up on the channel so we can all look at that quote and know exactly why so many girls get giant populations of followers. Why so many dilettantes, male and female, get giant populations of followers. Why so many of feckless little nerd dweebs get so many followers and following. It's because the substance of the people has been corrupted. Rory says, PA South Wales demonstrated outside the public libraries in Somerset, England yesterday against drag queen story hour. Good for them. Indeed, good for them. If they don't want it, then they absolutely need to be out there objecting to it. Great people over there. Lunder, this is one half. Okay. Once our destiny has been recaptured, there should be gigantic monuments with all the names of those who have lost their lives to anti-whitism. Yes. Like the Vietnam Wall. I mean, you imagine how long that wall would be. He says just the sheer size of them will. And then you have a part 2. I don't see it here. We know where you're going, brother. All right. We're going to be wrapping up now. Yep. It's time. And I think we're blank everywhere else. If any financial gifts come in late, we will discuss them next time we are together. 8:30, folks, 20 minutes from now, over on iHypocrites channel. It's going to be glorious, as it always is. And I know I'm not going to bed, and it's not terribly late, at least in this part of the world. But nonetheless, good night, America.